Wall Street veteran Bernard Madoff has been arrested and charged with running a $50 billion Ponzi scheme.
Congress wants to know what caused the Enron meltdown.
Now, while the collective rage currently is focused on WorldCom,
Tyco CEO Dennis Kozlowski was convicted of looting hundreds of millions of dollars.
This is one of the biggest fraud cases ever.
Their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Find out more on this week's episode of White Collars, Red Hands.
On the evening of June 25th, 1906, esteemed architect Stanford White entered fashionably late to the opening of the new musical Mam'selle Champagne, which was opening on the roof of a building that he himself designed, Madison Square Garden. As he took his seat at his reserved table just 5 rows from the stage, another man lurked in the shadows, fidgeting with a revolver tucked in his coat. Harry K Thaw, another millionaire attending the play that night, made a beeline for White's table, and when he was 12 feet away, he produced the revolver from inside of his coat and fired 3 times as he approached. A feud that had been bubbling under the surface between these pillars of wealth had just come to a violent head in front of thousands in attendance. The events that led up to this night were fraught with terrible behavior, the likes of which could only be allowed in the seedy underbelly that is controlled by the Dionysian celebration of excess that was employed by men of White's and Thaw's status. The trial that was to follow was dubbed another trial of the century, even though this century was still young. Find out what caused such a public murder and what happened to the man holding the pistol on this, the season 17 finale of White Collars, Red Hands.
Yeah, how do you, you can't deem anything the trial of the century until after the century is over.
Yeah, 7 years into the century, you're like, this one's it.
This is it, guys. Nothing crazier is going to happen.
It's like, I don't know. I just gotta...
There will not be a man named O.J. Simpson who kills his wife. That will not happen.
Yeah, what would... That sounds crazy. What would that happen? 90 years from now? There's no way. This is it. Not. I have a feeling Harry K Thaw, trial of the century.
Trial of the century.
Yeah. Well, was it the trial of the century? Yeah, definitely debatable. No one, I guarantee you that right now, you were not, if I asked 1,000 people what the trial of the century was, that one of them would say, oh yeah, that's that Harry K Thaw guy who shot the guy at Madison Square Garden, right? Yeah, so welcome to the season 17 finale. For those of you who have been with us for the previous 16 seasons, you'll know that the final episode is always a murder committed by the wealthy. Sometimes their victim is also wealthy, sometimes they're not. This just so happens to be 2 millionaires that one shot the other one.
2 millionaires, 1 bullet.
Multi-millionaires, and these are millionaires in the early 1900s. So
they're really, really millionaires.
Yeah, so it means
they would have hella money now.
A lot. But yeah, so welcome back. My name's Kashan.
And I'm Nina.
And yeah, we're talking about the murder of architect Stanford White and the person who did it, Harry K Thaw. And the woman in the middle, you'll find out, that caused all of it. Not caused all of it. It was not her fault. But she was the reason for these men why this came to a head.
Kashan is always blaming women.
Evelyn Nesbit. I love doing that. I love every time I see a victim, I'm like, blame that.
Blame a woman.
Blame that victim. That's me, famous for it. Jesus. Yeah, no, I should say at the beginning, though, there are a couple of trigger warnings for this. Obviously, violence. There's also sexual assaults involving a minor. And just kind of a lot of not great stuff that used to be present in our society in even greater numbers than it is now, but still is. Mm-hmm. So just be aware of that. Oh, suicide attempts, at least. No one did it to completion, but they tried. So
please don't use the word suicide into completion in the same sentence.
I didn't know how else to say it.
That is really gross.
I didn't know how else to say it.
Unsuccessful?
Yeah, I was just...
Or they did not successfully commit suicide?
I was halfway through the sentence. It didn't end up how I wanted it to, but yeah.
They didn't commit suicide to completion.
If I could go back and say it again...
If you could go back in history and change one moment, you would change that you said that?
Okay, let's not. No, I'd go back. I'd blame a victim more. Just... I don't do that. This is a joke. Anyway, let's learn about Harry Thaw, huh? Harry Kendall Thaw. was born on February 12th, 1871, into an already affluent family. His father, William Thaw, was a multimillionaire who made his fortune from a freight shipping business that he started and ran in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and also was in the coal business. So a lot of boats and train transportation and then coal. Harry was one of 11 children that William would have between his 2 wives, but Harry was definitely like the burnout of the bunch.
Every family's got to have one.
He didn't want to like work. He just wanted to be rich.
I hear that.
You know?
I understand that on a very deep spiritual level.
But not in actuality.
No,
you don't know what it's like at all, but you wish.
But I fantasize.
Yeah, sure.
When people are like, what is your fantasy? To be rich and not work. That's my fantasy.
Yeah. You basically just are the Kardashians, but without money.
Or any plastic surgery.
Yet. So it's because you can't afford it.
Yeah, imagine how hot it would be with the plastic surgery. Just if I had the right doctor.
We're not getting into this. His most famous sibling, Harry K Thaw, would likely be his sister Alice.
Alice Thaw is his sister? Oh my God.
Yeah, wait, let me scroll up on this. What'd she do, Nina?
She actually fell down a rabbit hole and she went to a place called Wonderland. What she did was she took acid and then she fell down the rabbit hole and then she went to a magical world. And then they wrote a biography about her and it was called Alice in Wonderland.
Wow, I hate to tell you this, Nina, but you're really fucking wrong.
Oh, damn.
She actually went on to marry an earl and became Countess of Yarmouth.
Oh.
So
I was so close.
Not at all. You're very far off. Harry, however, was an underperformer in school who was often seen as a troublemaker. He bounced around private schools, getting kicked out of a few, but still was admitted into the University of Pittsburgh after high school, likely due to his family's influence more than anything. He just had the money. Back in the early 1900s, there was no SAT score, ACT score. They just cared.
Paid.
Are you white? Are you a man? Do you have money? Oh, great. You get to vote and you get into the University of Pittsburgh.
Get your ass in here.
He wanted to be a lawyer. He studied law originally, but after a few unsuccessful years, he pushed his influence even further and got accepted into arguably the most prestigious college in America, Harvard.
Whoa.
So he was a transfer from the University of Pittsburgh to Harvard. He once again only spent a few years at Harvard, mostly just carousing, drinking, playing poker with his friends, and continuing to be crazy. One account said that he actually chased a cabbie with a shotgun down a street in 1884 because he believed that he had been overcharged for the ride by a dime.
I mean, by a dime.
Well, I mean, it's late 1800s. I mean, a dime goes a long way.
Yeah, damn. I mean, I can't fault him. I think this is a perfectly reasonable behavior.
Well, then I guess it'll make you feel even better to know that he justified it by saying, yo, guys, the shotgun wasn't like loaded, though.
See, these people can't take a joke.
You can chase a cabbie down the street with a shotgun as long as it's not loaded.
It's not loaded. It's supposed to scare him.
That's what's bad about it. In the end, Harvard decided to part ways with Thaw when he was expelled for immoral practices and for bouts of apparent violence against even teachers. Like he would try to like intimidate teachers and other students.
But the gun wasn't loaded.
Yeah. Come on, man. When he threatened his teacher, the gun wasn't loaded. It's fine. Which he'd continue these bouts until deep into adulthood, as we already know, and we'll find out more about. This whole time, though, his mother, Mary Sibbett Copley, thought that Harry he could do no wrong.
He's my baby boy.
And he was their little baby. And that he's just a victim of the world who didn't understand him, which I say is his fault. Harry's father, however, decided to put his foot down after Harry was expelled from Harvard and showed him what for when he reduced his monthly allowance to just a measly $2,500 a month.
In the 1800s.
Yeah, that is the equivalent of roughly $88,000 a month today. And 5 times more than the average salary at the time. An average working man took home $500, and he was taking home $2,500 as an allowance. And that's insane. And that was reduced. He was like, "This kid's narcissistic. Better only give him like 5 times a salary a month."
Oh my God.
When his father died in 1893, the mother who had always babied him decided to remove the governor on his allowance and raised it to $8,000 a month. So, I mean, that's roughly just over 3 times. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely more than $100,000 today. This is a month, mind you, again.
A month.
This is his monthly allowance.
Wait, I'm sorry. Why was his dad rich?
He was a coal and transportation magnate.
Got you.
So, yeah.
They liked coal back then. They used a lot of it.
It was the main fuel source, I believe. It was definitely before all these petroleum products because cars weren't around. So.
Right.
Until later in this story, and even then they weren't widely adopted. So with a dead dad, plenty of money, and his recent expulsion from Harvard, Harry decided he wanted a change of scenery and started spending more time in the city that never sleeps, New York City, which was already filled with debaucherous rich men that Harry hoped he could find common ground with. One such man was Stanford White. Stanford White, as we know from the intro, you guys were there, we were there, he was a very famous architect, known for the second iteration of Madison Square Garden, which was torn down in 1925, and there was one before it, so it's not like around. But he's also known for designing many other works, including one of his most defining and what defines New York City. It's one of the biggest draws is the Washington Square Arch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Still here.
Still here. A lot of his other ones are not here anymore. He did like the New York Herald building, which was a very famous building. That one's gone. And then he did also design some buildings in New England, like Massachusetts and Rhode Island, that are still around. But none of them are as famous as the Washington Square Arch, for sure. Stanford was born in 1853 and was the son of a renowned Shakespearean scholar who, like many Shakespearean scholars, did not have much money. Yeah. However, he became an architect apprentice at the age of 18 and toured Europe to learn more about building styles. And when he returns to the States, he started his own firm and rose to prominence in his field. Along the way, he married Bessie Smith in 1884, had some children, and became heavily invested in many of the clubs for rich and affluent men in the city. He held some influence over groups such as the Metropolitan Club, the Players Club, the I got to be careful with this one, the Knickerbocker Club.
What is that?
Well, knickerbockers are socks, so I don't know.
Oh, a sock club?
I think it's just a term. I think they just wore them. They might have
That's
been
weird.
Pants, maybe? Maybe pants. I don't know. There's something that goes on your legs.
Okay.
Of that, I'm positive. But I think they're socks because the Red Sox used to be, well, they were called the Stockings, but I think they used to be called the Boston Knickerbockers. So yeah, something like that. All of which had sent out denied applications to our troublemaker, Harry K Thaw.
Aw, man.
He came to the city. He wanted to rub elbows in the Knickerbocker Club.
Yeah.
And they were like, get the hell out of here. We don't want you here. Huh? You troublemaker. And after Thaw had some negative interactions with Stanford White, Thaw attributed his refusal from these clubs to White's influence. I guess they did not like each other. And who's to say if that's actually why or not? But I'm sure that he was at least heard.
Yeah.
You know? Although I will say, in my opinion, it's probably more likely that they just didn't like Thaw's crazy antics.
Yeah, very fair.
He had gotten into another rich boys club known as the Union League Club, but he was kicked out because he rode a horse into their building. What the fuck? Like up their steps and through their front door into the building, and they said that was ungentlemanly.
That would be ungentlemanly.
To ride a horse into the club.
I agree with that statement.
So I feel like they were just like, no, we just don't like this guy. He's kind of a dick.
Yeah.
So, and he was kind of a dick. More than kind of. But no, definitely it was Stanford White, the ginger with a huge mustache that did it.
And he's a ginger?
Not the consequences of your own actions. He's got a big old mustache, too.
Does he?
Yeah. He's ginger. And I think, oh God, what did they use to describe him? They said, He's boyish, but refined or something, but brawny, boyish but brawny, something like that. I don't know.
Cute.
And I was like, okay.
Sounds like a stud.
He was Stanford though was not without his own a bit of scandal. He was seen as an eccentric man who collected artwork and had a great obsession with sex.
Oh, a man that I can relate to.
I wouldn't say that just yet. He was
Okay, never mind.
He was storied to be at a party in 1895, which was the wedding anniversary for a polo player, John Elliott Cowden. Many famous men were here besides White, including famous artist Charles Dana Gibson and inventor Nikola Tesla. But notably absent from the guest list was Cowden's wife, even though it was their wedding anniversary.
They're like, oh my God, did you hear about this great party your husband was throwing? I was wondering where you were at. And she's like, what are you talking about?
It was all dudes. He invited like 24 dudes over for his wedding anniversary.
That's so weird.
It definitely is.
It's giving sausage party.
And was there a reason? Maybe.
Boink, boink.
They did not that we know of, but maybe, who knows? They were served 16 courses, each of which came with champagne. So you got a glass of champagne for all 16 courses.
Oh my God.
And at the end, with all the men quite sauced, a giant pie was wheeled into the room, and then out of the pie popped a scantily clad 16-year-old girl by the name of Susie Johnson.
I hope that's an alias.
No, I think that was a real name.
Oh, God.
It's the early 1900s. I think just everyone's called stuff like that.
Yeah,
so.
my God. Of course, it was a 16-year-old.
So this story made its way into papers of the day and was used by the prudish public as a way to show how the appetites of the rich were being sated in both food and in women. Like, it was kind of seen as like oh, the rich are debaucherous and sinful. And I mean, they are, but so is everyone. There's a guy that keeps on coming up that I haven't mentioned, but he was also part of the whiskey ring. His name's Anthony Comstock. So he was this like...
I remember you saying that name.
Yeah, he's like this government position that he like led a crusade against vice. And he was involved in a lot of this. Like, he was always in New York being like, these fucking guys... are all like all these rich people. On top of Madison Square Garden, Stanford White had put a naked figure of a goddess shooting an arrow.
Okay.
And Anthony Comstock hated it so much that
he went and put no clothes on her.
Yes. he got it ordered to put actual clothes on the statue. And then, like, they had, like, a really bad winter storm, and they flew off, and they were just
Listen, dude,
right.
she shoots the arrow with her tits. You cannot clothe her.
So people were upset at Stanford White, partially because of this story, and partially because of things like that. They saw him as, like, salacious. Not to mention, this dinner cost more than 2,000 times the average salary.
What were they eating?
There was a bunch of stuff.
Caviar.
I think that was on there. That had oysters, I think, was the first course. There was like bonbons. The whole menu, when I saw it, was French. I don't know if Cowden was French or not, but the whole menu was in French, so I don't know. And rumors began to spiral that Susie was the victim of all the men in attendance that night, that they had defiled her, and that she had actually disappeared afterwards, although she popped up in a small town years later. And this was reported on by Pulitzer, which we also mentioned in the Whiskey Ring. So I've learned a lot about late 1800s history.
Yeah, that poor girl. She probably had a lot happen to her that night.
Although I will say, this is during the reign of yellow journalism, which we learned about in the Thomas Ince case as well. And what is written in papers cannot be taken at face value. And so this story, there's a likelihood that like the pie thing never even happened because it was just in papers. So it's really hard to verify. Yeah. That being said, there are multiple other accounts from people close to him that say Stanford White did indeed have an appetite for sex well beyond his wife that manifested in what would definitely be far too young women nowadays. And he was in his like 40s. So, 16, 17-year-old women or,
He could be their dad.
It was like legal and like kind of okay, like socially then, but it's still weird.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's definitely not okay now. So.
Yeah, we're definitely, we don't support that now.
Yeah. And one of these far too young women of which he was interested in would play a large part in his death. A young and famously pretty girl by the name of Evelyn Nesbit. Evelyn was born in either 1884 or 1885 in Pennsylvania. We don't know because the records were destroyed in a fire. And Evelyn herself did not know because her mother would often lie about her age to get around child labor laws.
Oh, nice.
So she was like, I don't even know how old I am. I was either born in 84 or 85. which is funny to me. The Nesbit family was doing moderately all right financially, as her father was an attorney. You know, they made do. But when he died suddenly in 1893, the family was left destitute, and Evelyn had to join the working force, originally helping her mom as a counter clerk at a department store. An artist came in one day when Evelyn was about 14 and remarked on her natural beauty and asked to use the girl as a model for a portrait. Because the artist was a woman, Evelyn's mother agreed, and the artist paid the young girl a whole $1 for the session.
Nice.
Which was like the equivalent of $31 today. So you're 14. That's not bad. This quickly snowballed into many other artists asking for her modeling services. And eventually she decided to pursue it as a full-time venture and looked to make it in the big time of New York City, moving to the Big Apple in November of 1900 when she was just 16. Or 15, depending. Through some connections from artists in Pennsylvania, Evelyn started booking gigs in her new city. First, just for paintings, but quickly transitioned into the now burgeoning realm of photography as well. And has multiple well-known photo shoots, including posing on a bearskin rug, and in Charles Dana Gibson's famous work, The Gibson Girls. Evelyn is the model for the most famous of these, where her trademark huge hair is shaped into a question mark around her profile figure. For those of you at home, or watching the video at least, I'll put a picture of her Gibson girl drawing right here. Also, remember, Gibson was also at that girl in a pie party. And
math is mathing.
And maybe how Stanford White first heard about her. Or, you know, maybe he saw one of her many works. She was getting a lot of work as a model at this time.
He was like asking around, who can pop out of my pie? And he was like, oh, Evelyn Nesbit can pop out of a pie.
Well, I don't know if there were any more pies. Not for sure.
Yeah.
There's swings, though. We'll find out. Then in May of 1901, Evelyn made the leap from model to actress when she was cast in what was the most popular Broadway musical at the turn of the century, Florodora.
Oh, I love Florodora.
You do not know.
I've never heard of it.
I listened to the music. It is not
bad?
Not good. I mean, maybe of its time, but it is an Edwardian musical. And, I just don't think those are... I think I'll wait till Rodgers and Hammerstein before I get into musicals.
I could not even tell you one Edwardian musical.
And you shouldn't. They're bad. Evelyn joined Florodora as a chorus girl, which were, these chorus girls were famous at the time and dubbed the Florodora Girls. The Florodora Girls all had to be exactly 5 feet 4 inches tall and 130 pounds. And they were rotated out often with 70 women passing through there was a sextet. There were 6 roles, 6 Florodora chorus girls.
Wow.
They left quickly because they were often proposed to by wealthy audience members, and it is said that the original 6 all married a millionaire within the first year of the show's run.
Damn, I'm too tall. I could not have been a Florodora girl.
You could not have been a Florodora girl. So she joined as one of them at the bright young age of 16. Yeah, and this musical ran for a while. It first opened in 1899 in the West End, and then it had a revival in like 2006 on the West End.
Didn't need to do that.
Oh, I bet it was terrible. Just listen to the music. It's very like imagine any what's that thing? A Victrola. It's like that wind-up thing with the big horn that plays a shellac record. Imagine any of the music you'd think coming out of that. That's what it sounded like.
That sounds boring.
It was terrible. Evelyn also had a chance to meet a millionaire, though, during her tenure. And that millionaire was Stanford White. White knew another of the Florodora girls and got her to arrange a lunch with Evelyn. Although she originally thought this would be a large social luncheon, she was quite surprised when it was an intimate, small lunch for just 4 people, including her and White. And it was at his apartment.
Oh, gross.
She had a friend there, at least.
I know, but it's still yucky.
After the lunch, Stanford showed Evelyn and the other chorus girl a special room in his house.
This is giving 50 Shades.
Which may or may not have been like Christian Grey's special room.
Not at 16, oh my God.
Stanford's was painted all green with a red velvet swing hanging from the center of the room. He had a swing room.
The swing was velvet?
Yeah.
How could you clean that?
Red velvet.
Oh, gross.
Probably didn't. All the better for the smell in them, all right?
Ah! Yeah, because Sean.
You know he was doing some weird stuff,
Oh,
okay?
you know he was. Yeah, he had a velvet swing.
Evelyn and her friend took turns being pushed on the swing to everyone's general delight. But please remember that she is 16. Yeah, so it's all kind of weird.
Haha, Mr. Stanford, you're so funny.
Evelyn and Stanford, who she affectionately called Stanny, became fast friends, and Stanford even won over the girl's mother, who was at first reluctant, but soon allowed Evelyn to spend much time with Stanny at various parties that he hosted. This could be because he was a joyous, jolly sort of man, but also could have something to do with the fact that he would give many expensive gifts to Evelyn and provide a lot of monetary assistance to her and her mother.
So I don't know if you know this, but this behavior is called grooming. This is grooming.
Correct. One such instance about 2 months after Evelyn had met Stanny, Evelyn's mother mentioned she wanted to travel by train to visit some family back in Pennsylvania, but bemoaned that, oh no, I don't have the money to do so. Immediately, Stanford offered to pay not only for her train ticket, but all the necessary arrangements for the trip. Soon after she left, White struck, inviting Evelyn over to his house for a soiree one night. When she arrived, however, she found herself alone with White. He said that, unfortunately, everyone else he invited had decided last minute to cancel.
Of course.
Classic trick. I got tricked into a date in high school that way. I was supposed to meet someone for a birthday party, and I got there, and she's like, all my friends canceled on the movie. And I was like, well, looks like we're going to a movie alone.
That's weird.
It was. Evelyn first made to leave, as, you do. But he said, well, dinner's already prepared, right? It'd be a shame for all this food to go to waste. So they sat down, they ate and drank champagne, a lot of champagne, at which time Evelyn remembers not much before waking up to her body floating above her. But it wasn't some out-of-body experience or lucid dream. It was just her reflection in the mirror above Stanny's bed.
Whoa, he was a freak.
She was nude.
It was not easy to get mirrors back then.
Well, he's also rich, so I mean.
I know,
he can do
but
whatever he wants.
ooh.
She was nude, and so was White next to her. And the blood on her leg ended any doubt about what had occurred. And she began to cry, which woke Stanford, who supposedly gave her a kimono to cover herself, and said, and I quote, "Don't cry, kittens. It's all over. Now you belong to me." Which, I think we could all agree that that's gross.
Yeah,
this whole
that's,
thing's gross and awful. And Stanford White is much older than her. Evelyn even remarked so to her friend after that first lunch. Or she said, he's quite old. And he was. And although it definitely is deplorable based just on the power dynamic and the age difference and how he groomed her with money and gifts, Evelyn thought she was actually into Stanford White even after this first. She was not happy about this, but she had told herself that she had feelings for him in some way. So they continued to have a romantic relationship on and off for the next 2 years.
It makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah. This is, I mean, you look at it. Anything in the 1900s, you're like, wow.
Yeah,
gross.
well, what's gross is this still happens today. So.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, this time it was like normal.
Oh yeah, that was
This is
super.
normal.
It was like no one was gonna get in trouble for this.
Someone might be
especially.
like, you shouldn't do that, but no one was like, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
So, yes, and unfortunately, yes, it does happen today. Evelyn, of course, was a hot commodity, though. I mean, she was a very famous model, so she was getting a lot of attention elsewhere. And there was an opportunity from other men more her age. And knowing that she could never be Stanny's wife, since he already had one of those, she did entertain them. At one point, a young newspaper sketch artist, who would later go on to be one of the greatest stage actors of his time, John Barrymore, the brother of Ethel Barrymore, for those of you who are familiar with famous early 1900s actresses.
Any relation
of the
to
stage.
Drew?
I don't know. Maybe. But John Barrymore, he was 21 at the time, and he showed interest in Evelyn. But quickly, Evelyn's mother and Stanford conspired to end it before it even began and got Evelyn to hastily agree to go to a boarding school in New Jersey, which was effective at ending the relationship and never went beyond there. Another male suitor was Mr. Monroe, who attended almost 40 performances of the latest Evelyn Nesbit Broadway vehicle, Wild Rose, in which she was the star.
Not creepy at all.
Yeah, this was also normal at the time. The same thing with the Floridora girls. Like, I mean, guys would come and they would send gifts to them, and eventually they'd all get married.
Yeah. 40 performances is a bit much, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about how many either. It couldn't have been that long. He had to come to like most of them, right? That's crazy. I don't like to watch a movie much more than once unless I really, really like it.
Right.
So, Miss Monroe sent her lavish gifts and was constantly asking for a date through the cards on flowers or chocolates, but the response was always a polite decline. Finally, though, through a mutual friend, Mr. Monroe got a lunch date scheduled. And when he arrived, he kissed the hem of her dress, declared her the prettiest girl in New York, and also revealed himself to really be millionaire playboy Harry K Thaw.
Okay, so this is where the problem lies. He needed to watch the movie Just Friends with Ryan Reynolds because then he would know a lunch date puts you in the friend zone.
The movie that would come out 90 years later?
Yes.
Well, I'll surprise you. He did not stay in the friend zone, but...
Damn.
But yeah. It is thought that he might have targeted Evelyn not only for her beauty and looks, but also to spite Stanford White, who he still held a grudge for, and he knew they were close, and he was still like, nah, this guy made it so I couldn't get any of these famous rich boy clubs, so I'm going to date his underage girlfriends.
So wait, how old's Henry K Thaw at this point?
He's about the same age as Stanford White.
Oh, gross.
He's like late 30s, early 40s.
All right.
So... yeah, he might. Was he older? I'd have to go back and look, but yeah.
Okay,
he's old. They're both old.
Still not age appropriate.
Yeah. Thaw wormed his way in deeper when Evelyn got a bad case of appendicitis in 1903, and Thaw rushed her into a hospital and paid for her life-saving surgery. While she recovered, Thaw talked Evelyn's mom into the both of them coming on a trip to Europe with him, a trip that Evelyn would later regret saying yes to. On this trip, Thaw sought to frantically travel across the country, which soon tired Evelyn's poor mother. And he would also instigate like little tiffs between them to try and drive them a little apart day by day, to the point that Evelyn's mother said she wanted to leave. So the pair just left her in London and said, okay, you go back to the States. We're going to continue on to Paris. So it was just Thaw and Evelyn from then on out. In Paris, Thaw asked Nesbit to marry him, which she declined. Harry Thaw had this like obsession with female chastity and prudishness.
Of course he did.
He was in talks with Anthony Comstock. They were kind of like buddy-buddy. So he was in many ways the antithesis to Stanford White, at least in that way. Evelyn knew this and admitted that she couldn't marry him because she was no longer a virgin. Thaw then set about interrogating her about the matter for hours until she had told him everything about her relationship with Stanford White, including that night when she drank the champagne and was taken advantage of. And this really messed with Harry Thaw, supposedly because throughout the entire ordeal, he was really practicing his active listening by shouting things like, my God, and poor child, and oh no, over and over and over again as he, I guess she said he was like making like a really crazy show of it. But even then, after she was done telling him, he forced her to tell it again, asking for her not to leave out any details.
Oh, perfect. Yep. Okay.
And then
just re-traumatize her.
She did. So
perfect.
And just in case you started thinking, oh, well, maybe Thaw's a good guy.
No, he's not a good guy. He's a piece of shit.
Just in case you were like, oh, he cares about her, I will ruin that if that's somehow what you thought. Because you see, he then took Nesbit on a weird tour like of sites that specifically focused on female virgin martyrdom. Like the birthplace of Joan of Arc, for one, where he actually left the following inscription in the visitor book, and I quote, She would not have been a virgin if Stanford White had been around.
Jesus Christ.
So that's not the bad part, however, at least not the worst part, because in a castle in Austria-Hungary, he did exactly what he said he despised Stanford White for doing when he broke into Evelyn's room at night, whipped her with a rawhide whip.
What the fuck?
And then repeatedly whipped her with a rawhide whip repeatedly and sexually assaulted her.
Where'd he get the whip?
He had a thing about whips. You'll find out.
He was a freak.
Later in a trial, they.
Wait, no, he wasn't the one.
No, he's the one that's supposedly a prude.
Yeah, it's Stanford White. That's a freak nasty.
Yeah, he's the one. He's like, at least he's open about being like, I like sex.
Why did he beat her? Because she wasn't a virgin, or just because he's fucked?
Because he's into whipping. I think he just likes whipping people.
Oh yeah.
I think he likes whips.
Okay.
So, and hey, here's the thing. You might have been able to find someone who also liked whips as much as you. Those people exist, but instead you did it to this poor,
traumatized this girl.
You did it to this poor
Again.
girl. Yeah, after you were all upset about it from somebody else, you just go and do the same thing, which is gross.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
Afterwards, on the trip and when they returned to America, Thaw supposedly was very apologetic and continuously love-bombed Evelyn until she agreed to marry him in 1905. And the married life continued to be underwhelming for Evelyn, who now found herself under the influence of Thaw's mother at every turn, who she babied and controlled Thaw, and then now she was just doing the same to this poor young woman. And under it all, she still kept a friendship with Stanford White. But Thaw, of course, knew nothing about it because he still harbored a hatred for the man and what he thought he did to his wife years before.
Well, fair.
Yeah.
But then you did the same thing to her, so.
Yeah, but the whole thing is he might have sought her out in the first place because he didn't like Stanford White. So it's like, it's just kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that now he's using this as a reason to be even more upset at him just because he hated the guy to begin with.
Yeah.
And that's why when on that fateful night in 1906, when the couple were at Madison Square Garden watching Mam'zelle Champagne, and when Evelyn saw White enter the audience, she told Thaw that she wanted to leave. Others were actually doing so because, admittedly, Mam'zelle Champagne is supposedly not a very good show. Everyone was
it also an Edwardian musical?
It was. Everyone was leaving because they were like, this is boring and sucks. Originally, Thaw agreed to leave with her, but as they were walking to the exit, Evelyn got distracted talking to a friend, and Thaw slipped away, heading straight for Stanford. He pulled the revolver from his coat and fired 3 shots, 1 hitting his shoulder and 2 to the forehead and face area, killing White immediately.
Oh my God.
Then he raised his gun to the sky and proclaimed in front of everyone in attendance, "I did it because he ruined my wife. He had it coming to him. He took advantage of the girl and then abandoned her."
Thank you for telling everyone my trauma. Appreciate that.
Since he had done the same thing, I guess he was just more worried about the abandonment part rather than the ruining part. I don't know.
I think it was just another reason. I mean, he already hated him. It was
He just really wanted to shoot this guy.
Yeah, that was what it was.
Also, by the way, he was wearing a thick woolen overcoat that he had the revolver in. It was a hot summer night. And everyone was like, why is this guy fucking wearing a coat the whole time?
It's like, I like to sweat.
So he could have the revolver. Because there's a whole thing where, like, people think it was like there's a decent chance that it was premeditated.
Well, that sounds 100% premeditated.
Stanford White, he designed the building and he rented out the entire top floor of Madison Square Garden. So he was definitely probably gonna be there.
Yeah,
and he was known to show up to the shows that were playing on the rooftop.
Yeah.
So.
No, this was 100% premeditated.
Yeah, and he said later that he thought that Stanford White had like thugs that were out to get him, and that's why he carried the pistol. I don't think that's true.
Whatever, dude.
Like, from my view of it, I think that Stanford White was, like, it's gross that he was into sleeping with 16-year-olds, but it was socially allowed at the time, I guess. Like, I still think it's gross, but I don't think he was necessarily like some evil mastermind or anything.
Nah, he was just a fucking perv.
Yeah, he's just
a pedophile, but
he's just a pervy old man. But at a time when you wouldn't be called a pedophile for sleeping with 16-year-olds,
right? No, it was fine.
But in retrospect, yeah, it's fucking gross.
He's just a nasty guy.
So people at first, actually, when Thaw shot Stanford, everyone in the audience thought it was like an elaborate prank because it was very common for rich people to do stuff like that at the time, like just to do something crazy like this as like a joke, like a haha, like, oh, you thought I shot this guy.
Hilarious.
But when they realized he was actually dead, they obviously freaked the fuck out. And the show director, for some reason, tried to start up the show again.
Hello, the show must go on.
I'm saying that he must have really taken that literally, but no one told him there's definitely some exceptions. Murder's one of those. Yeah. You don't have to continue. Imagine someone got shot halfway through SpongeBob the Musical, and they're like, no.
They're like, guys, it's a Bikini Bottom day.
Yeah,
we gotta finish.
Best day ever's coming up. Okay, let's at least run through the first act, and then we'll get this body out of here.
Then we'll get out.
No, you don't do that. You just end it. So quickly, he was in a bunch of people. Thaw was grabbed by a man and led to the elevator to take him down to downstairs where there would be police officers somewhere. And on his way out, he passed by Evelyn, who looked and supposedly said, "Look at the fix you're in." To which he replied, "I have probably saved your life," before being arrested and charged with murder, obviously. While in prison, Thaw used his money to avoid the worst of his conditions, as he was allowed to sleep in a full brass bed rather than just a cot.
Wow.
And he ate meals catered by the fanciest restaurants in the city, including a place called Delmonico's. I guess that was I don't know if it's still around, but that was mentioned a lot. That was one of his favorite restaurants. He also used his influence to purchase the best lawyers available to him. The trial that was to come would be highly reported on, and as I said, dubbed the trial of the century, which once again was only 7 years in. Louis Delafield, Thaw's first lawyer, originally wanted to cooperate with the district attorney, William T. Jerome, who was acting as prosecutor in the case, to get Thaw declared legally insane. Mm-hmm. Since Thaw murdered White publicly in front of countless witnesses and made a declaration afterwards, it seemed like the only way for Thaw to avoid execution. Mm-hmm. Only one small problem, though. That's that Thaw would not be labeled as insane. He was like, I'm not insane. I am not crazy. Don't tell people that. And he spoke publicly, telling anyone who listened, he's like, no, I'm sane. I'm not insane. That's bullshit. Like immediately countering what his lawyer was trying to do. So obviously he quickly dismissed Delafield and hired a new lawyer just 3 weeks in John Gleason. And Gleason instead sought to paint the scenario as they were like, he talked with the matriarch of the Thaw family, and they were like, you know what, let's not say he's crazy. That'll look bad on the family, right? Just say he was temporarily insane.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be better.
He just had a bad day.
Yeah, so he had a bout of temporary insanity that caused his client to commit the murder, which was referred to as the time as a brainstorm.
I've had a brainstorm before.
Well, at least you didn't kill anybody.
You're right.
That I know of.
No.
This plan of action proved poor, though, as the prosecution called a witness that had claimed to see Thaw pull the revolver from his pocket earlier in the night and said that Thaw said, "Find and kill that," some expletive that was deleted from the record, "before daylight," showing that there was some definite premeditation in it, and he didn't just go crazy for a little bit and shoot him. Gleason saw that he was losing and actually withdrew himself from the case, in which case a now third defense lawyer took over in, I don't know if this is French or not. I'm going to say Delphine Delmas.
I would say Delphine.
But it could be Delphine Delmas.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm going to say Delphine Delmas. And if you want to come for me for that, then fine. I guess. So the third lawyer, Delphine Delmas, who had never lost a case. He was famous for having never lost a case. He was a famous lawyer from San Francisco. He stepped in, and he instead sought to discredit Stanford White, paint him as such a villain that the jury would excuse his murder. And his key witness was Evelyn Nesbit. She reluctantly took the stand and recounted the night with Stanford White, saying, and this is a direct quote, When I came to myself, I was greatly frightened and started to scream. Mr. White came and tried to quiet me. As I sat up, I saw mirrors all over. I began to scream again, and Mr. White asked me to keep quiet, saying that it was all over. When he threw the kimono over me, he left the room. I screamed harder than ever. I don't remember much of anything after that. He took me home, and I sat up all night crying. And she also told the court that she had been drugged on top of the drinking, and that
You could have put a drug in her drink.
We'll find out later.
Oh.
That her last glass of champagne had tasted bitter before she had passed out. The prosecution then produced an affidavit during the cross-examination that supposedly Evelyn had signed after her return from Europe that was for a case against Harry Thaw, her now husband, and detailed his assault of her in the castle. The defense and Evelyn said that this had been fabricated. Later on, though, Evelyn would admit that she lied on the stand at the behest of her husband and lawyer to help their case. She said that she was not drugged that night, but she did drink a lot of champagne, and that she admitted to crying, but that she never screamed out loud afterwards. And that she did write and sign that affidavit after her return from the trip because she had confessed what had happened to Stanford White, and he had actually gotten her in contact with an attorney so that she could form a case against Thaw. But then she had second thoughts about pursuing the case.
And then she married him.
It is also speculated that Harry's mother paid Evelyn $25,000 for her testimony in the trial to help manipulate the story and to help her son, which I didn't even put this in here, but there were actually multiple instances of his mother just using money to bribe people to not.
Yeah.
It's true with, especially at this time, all rich families.
Oh, yeah.
They would just
They still do it.
Yeah, you just throw money at it until they go away.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, it works.
It does work.
Because people need money.
Yep.
So Evelyn, being an actress, and because the events were almost definitely traumatizing her for sure, she didn't have to reach far for it, she won over the jurors with her emotional testimony. The prosecution, sensing that the jury was leaning towards the defense, then tried to get Thaw officially declared insane by something which is frivolously called a lunacy panel, which the judge allowed. He's like, okay, fine, send this guy to a lunacy panel. But they found that Thaw was perfectly sane.
Damn.
So he was not crazy, and you couldn't stop it based on that. In his closing statement, Delmas claimed that if his client was insane, then, and this is another direct quote, call it Dementia Americana. That is the species of insanity which makes every American man believe his home to be sacred. That is the species of insanity which makes him believe the honor of his daughter is sacred. That is the species of insanity which makes him believe the honor of his wife is sacred. That is the species of insanity which makes him believe that whosoever invades his home, that whosoever stains the virtue of his threshold, has violated the highest of human laws and must appeal to the mercy of God, if mercy there be for him anywhere in the universe. Thanks.
I like the British accent, even though they're definitely American.
He could have been British. You don't
That's
know.
True.
He's a lawyer, you know. They sometimes they fake stuff like that to sound fancy.
That's true.
All right.
They do that.
You're lucky I didn't do like Southern lawyer. Now I say.
I say.
The highest of human laws must appeal to the mercy of God. No, so that would have been a worse choice. After 47 hours of deliberation, the jury came back deadlocked at 7 votes for conviction and 5 for acquittal, and a new trial had to be ordered.
Wow.
At the second trial, there was much less attention, media coverage, fanfare, and the defense switched back to arguing just not guilty by means of insanity. They were like, all right, never mind. He's crazy. Just say he's crazy. This time, Evelyn and others took the stand claiming that Thaw had a long-standing history of abuse and crazy behavior, which, I believe.
Yeah.
Some of the testimony was weird where they had like one of his math teachers from high school come back and be like, yeah, he used to walk in like zigzag lines. And I'm like, what? That was a big one. I was like, does that make somebody crazy if you just...
why can't he walk straight? Sounds weird to me.
All right. I guess you're on their side. Nina's on their side.
I'm kidding.
And then some of it was like his mom got up there and be like, okay, so yeah, he's got like multiple uncles who became mentally enfeebled and ended up in sanatoriums. Ooh. And they were like, okay. And they were like, oh, also he was like violent and he really likes whipping people. They produced like a jeweled whip that he had. He had a jeweled-handled whip. This guy's crazy. And this time, they got their not guilty verdict by means of insanity. But the judge still deemed Harry a danger to society.
I would agree.
So he ordered him confined to a mental institution until he was deemed fit for release. 7 years later, after Harry Thaw escaped his institution and fled to Canada with the help of his mother, he was finally called back in front of a court that deemed him sane enough to be released to the general public. So, after his release, Evelyn did officially divorce him in 1915, and she quickly remarried her Broadway dancing partner, Jack Clifford. They, though, would divorce not long after that, and she would never remarry. She did sign a multi-picture deal with Fox Studios and actually graced the early silver screen for multiple years before she was deemed too old by Hollywood, which happened to a lot of women. And she spent some years in the cabarets throughout the Eastern Coast. And she eventually moved to L.A., where she lived the rest of her years modestly as a sculptor and a sculpting teacher. In 1955, her likeness graced the screen in a dramatic retelling of her entanglement with White and Thaw, titled The Girl in the Red Velvet Swing, which sparked interest again for the case, at least for a bit, although the movie was a critical and financial flop. She did eventually write a book about the events of her life, and in this book, she describes how Stanford White was supposedly the only man she ever loved, and that although she did admit that he wronged her, and that he did pursue young women, of which she was one, that she didn't let that blind her description of him, is I think was the quote. Is she's like, I know that what he did was bad, but I think that he actually was like a great man.
Well, unfortunately, you can't control who you love, and also he brainwashed her. So.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Is I'm like,
she thought she loved him, but
and then he died, and then he got murdered. So it's hard to say how that would have happened. But yeah, you know, I think that he was gross and a pervert, but I think that Harry Thaw is the more villainous person if you had to choose.
They're both bad.
But they're both bad. At least Stanford White didn't whip her.
That's true.
You know, there's that at least. Evelyn Nesbit passed away in January of 1967, with almost no one knowing just how famous she was in her youth. Harry K Thaw continued being crazy, and actually just a year after he was deemed sane, he was arrested again after he kidnapped a 19-year-old boy named Fred Gump by telling him he wanted to help him through college, luring him to a city, trapping him in a hotel, and then undressing him and whipping him severely.
This is a weird kink.
Yeah, I don't know. So after Gump went to the police and told them, they found Thaw, and Thaw, when they found him, had attempted suicide by slashing his own wrists and his own throat. But somehow...
Gotta go deeper, dude.
Yeah, somehow he was still alive, and he was once again found to be insane and confined to a mental institution, where he was once again deemed sane 7 years later and released in 1924, after which he decided his mother was dead at this point. He decided, you know what, I'm done with New York, and he moved to Florida and lived on a lavish estate and died of a heart attack just days after his 76th birthday in 1947. In his will, he divided up his $1 million estate and left Evelyn Nesbit $10,000, or about 1% of his net worth.
Well, they were divorced.
Yeah, I didn't even go into... She supposedly had a child that was his, that she said was conceived during a conjugal visit while he was in the insane asylum the first time. And he was like, nope, not my kid. And he denied it forever.
Whoa.
So he never helped her anything with that until he died. Well, I guess supposedly he said that he was sending her money every now and again. I don't know if
Probably
that's
wasn't.
true. And,
Probably wasn't.
but yeah, she was paid $10,000 for the movie, The Girl in the The Girl in the Red Velvet Swing.
Well, I'm glad they compensated her for her story.
Yeah, that movie cost $1.3 million to make in 1955.
In 1955?
Yeah, but it only made 1.3 in the box office. So.
Wonder where we can watch it.
Oh, it's on something, I'm
You
sure.
think they got it on Hulu?
TLC. Oh, no, TCM, not TLC. TLC, that'd be a weird move for them. TCM. The story of the murder of Stanford White might be almost 120 years old, but the love that the rich have to be debaucherous and ruin lives is still with us. Evelyn Nesbit was the victim of two powerful men who were more than 20 years her senior, who took advantage of a teenager. Harry K Thaw took it to another level when he let his anger at Stanford White over his ousting from social clubs grow to a murderous rage over a woman who he had also assaulted. He may have spent 14 years locked in the nut house, but he never spent one day in federal prison.
Yeah.
And he got to die a free man in his mansion in Florida. The only good thing I can see about this is that at Harry K Thaw's funeral, there were less than 20 mourners for a man who still held such wealth. None of his siblings even made it.
Wow.
So, well, one of them was, a lot of them were dead. But
Well, yeah, he was one of 11.
I hope that if there is an afterlife, that Harry K Thaw is spending it getting his ass whipped with a rawhide whip like the one he used on Evelyn somewhere in the depths, deepest depths of hell. And that is the story of Harry K Thaw and the murder of Stanford White. All at the middle of a terrible, disgusting old man love triangle with Evelyn Nesbit.
Poor Evelyn. There's a lot of trauma.
Yeah, I mean, luckily it seemed she I also didn't go into this. She afterwards became Harry Thaw was a big cocaine addict, I guess. Mm-hmm. And after the trial, she began to also struggle heavily with substance abuse issues, with alcohol, and she was having some pain, and one of her friends gave her a shot, which happened to be morphine. So she got addicted to opioids on top of alcohol. And it was pretty bad for a while until she actually attempted suicide by drinking cleaner, I think, at one point. And she went to rehab. She got clean. And then she while she was recovering from her issues, she went into this whole spiritual phase. She learned a bunch about other religions from the world. And just kind of put her life into new perspective, and from then on out, she was pretty solid. So she came out good on the other side, which is a good success story at least. Mm-hmm. It ended terribly for the two men who abused her, and it ended probably some of the best it could for her. So that's good to hear. And yeah, I think that's all the asides I have. I mean, I'm looking at the clock here, and this episode's already over an hour before we edit, so I'm sure this is on the longer side. So I hope you liked it, even though it was long. I think it was information rich.
I liked it.
Yeah, and if you liked it at home, it'd be great if you'd show it by leaving a review. What?
I don't know, the way you said it was funny.
Leaving a review. You can leave a star review on Spotify or an Apple Podcasts. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts. And you can also just follow on whatever podcatcher you may be listening to. If you're that one person who's on Player FM, you're yeah, I'm still here, and I'm gonna give you a like. Well, please do. That'd be great. You can also watch the videos. They're a video podcast. And look, we had been kind of fuzzy recently until I cleaned the lens on the camera, or the thing in front of the camera. So this is a lot higher quality today, and will be going forward, I guess. But you can watch those videos on Spotify. Spotify is really putting a lot of money into their video podcasting area. They're seeing a lot of that in the future. I don't know if people actually watch them, but you can do it there. Or you can watch on YouTube at White Collars Red Hands. You can also check us out on our other socials. That's facebook.com/White Collars Red Hands, Twitter at White Collars Pod, Instagram at White Collars _Red Hands, TikTok at White Collars Red Hands. If you want to get in touch with us, you can DM us there, or you can send us an email at whitecollarsredhands@gmail.com, or go to our website I've said White Collars Red Hands so much, but it's whitecollarsredhands.com. You can drop us a line there. And while you're there, why don't you click that button that says check out our merch. Buy some merch. White Collars Red Hands. They got hats. They got bags. They got so much stuff. You can go there and you can get something. So please do. Another way to support us, you say, why don't you just tell anyone who will listen to about it, huh? You say words to people
all the time.
Tens of times a day at least. Why don't you make at least one of those times include our names? Huh?
Yeah.
Pass us around your friend circle. All right? Please do. There's something else?
No.
An episode, recommended episode. So as you know, this is a season finale. So we are about... You good?
Yeah, sorry.
This is a season finale, which means we're going to take the next 3 weeks off so that we can have the holidays off, and we can also take a break because, it is kind of grueling to put 10 of these out back to back to back in a season. And we like a break.
I'm tired.
Well, you're always tired, Nina.
Yeah, it's bad this week.
So in the meantime, why don't you take the time to send us recommendations for an episode next season? We try to do a fan-submitted episode every season. This season was the Columbus Zoo scandal that was submitted to us. So you could be the next season. We'll give you a little shout-out. Who knows? And I think with that, that's going to be it. So thank you so much for listening. We'll see you on another season of White Collars, Red Hands.